The conflict between Lebanese militant group Hezbollah and Israel could worsen, with an Israeli military chief pledging boots will enter what he calls enemy territory. It comes amid efforts at the UN to broker a ceasefire. ABC correspondent Catherine Diss is in Jerusalem. Carrington Clark joins us from New York. Good morning both. Catherine, kicking off with you, what have we heard from the Israeli military?
Good morning, Michael. Well, look, this is the clearest and strongest indication that we've yet had from the Israeli military about its plans. Obviously, we've seen an increase in aerial bombardment on targets within Lebanon to try and wear down the enemy ahead of sending in possible ground troops. That certainly makes sense from a military perspective. And that's the strategy that we heard from Israel's military chief today, Herzi Halevi, when he spoke to the 7th Brigade, soldiers from the 7th Brigade, whilst touring the northern border of Israel. He sat down with those soldiers and he spoke about the strategy. He said that Israel was preparing for a possible entry into enemy territory with the aim of being able to return its citizens to the north of the country. And that's what we also heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He spoke at a late-night press conference today where he said that he couldn't provide any more detail about Israel's plans, but reiterated that it was to return its civilians to the north of the country. He also spoke about recent successes at hitting Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. This is the heaviest bombardment that we've seen since this conflict has broken out. It's not just hitting targets in the south of the country and causing displacement there, but also in the capital, Beirut, and further to the north. Lebanon's health ministry saying that just this week alone, more than 600 people have been killed and close to 2,000 people injured. As to whether or not a ground invasion is imminent, that would seem unlikely given just how candid the army chief was today, and because we expect the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to attend the UN National Assembly in New York at some point. So that would be highly unusual to launch such an offensive whilst he was out of the country.
We are preparing the process of a manoeuvre, which means your military boots, your manoeuvring boots, will enter enemy territory, enter villages that Hezbollah has prepared as large military outposts with underground infrastructure, staging points and launch pads into our territory, and carry out attacks on Israeli civilians.
OK, Carrington in New York, what are world leaders saying there at the UN?
Yeah, it's day 2 here of the United Nations high-level week, and Lebanon is front of mind for many of the speeches we've seen already at the Assembly today. We saw the French President Emmanuel Macron take to the stage, and he had an explicit warning to Israel saying that they could not extend this conflict into Lebanon without consequence. And he implored both Israel and Hezbollah to pull back from the brink.
We cannot have a war in Lebanon. There cannot be a war in Lebanon. This is why we urge Israel to cease this escalation in Lebanon, and we urge Hezbollah to cease the missile launches to Israel. We urge all of those who provide them with the means to do so to stop doing so.
And France is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. They have called a special session to deal with the situation unfolding in Lebanon. We've also heard from the United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He says he is working tirelessly behind the scenes with partners to avoid a full-blown war between Israel and Hezbollah. And the US President Joe Biden, in an interview, said that he believed some sort of peace deal is still possible. And we will hear from the Security Council on that special session around Lebanon a little later today.